2:30 where I am, and then Tim and Marcel are on the West Coast. But greetings to each of you. A couple of quick announcements, Tim. I was going to ask or let people know that we are starting to send out a regular email every day, just as a reminder that the daily briefing is getting started. If you do or do not want to subscribe to that, just let us know. We're going to hopefully be creating a little management form so you can subscribe to this and not to that and make that really convenient for you. But if you have any feedback on that, we certainly would appreciate that. We've heard from quite a few folks that say, hey, if I don't get an email, I don't remember or I don't know about this thing. Also, we have published a recap of everything we talked about last week. So on the RevThink website, there's a digest, and the digest did go out by email as well, but it has a link to all 5 live streams from last week and the topic that we covered each day. So that's pretty cool. Tim, what did you want to share with us about our friend Chris?
Oh, yeah, great. Chris Sloan is a friend of ours. He's been an industry leader for many years. And a few years ago, he suffered a family tragedy. And from that, he created the Calder and Caleb Sloan's Foundation, or I'm sorry, Caleb and Calder Sloan's Foundation. It's called the Awesome Foundation. It's in honor of his son. And recently what they've done is decided to match people's donations to nonprofits of their choice. So he has a challenge going on right now, up to $250. Folks that are willing to donate to a nonprofit, the Awesome Foundation is going to match that donation. So what a great opportunity to reach out to those people that are in need, support something that is close to your heart, and really kind of honor the life of this young man that was so close to many of us and so important to the Sloan family. So be sure to do that. I'll post information on the chat here right now and in Slack so that people know where to follow up. But I just love that, Joel. I just love what Chris is doing and his heart with this foundation. Every way we can support it would be great.
Well, Chris has obviously been quite an influential owner for years at 2C Media, and he's going through all sorts of transitions, and to see him finding a way to enter this season of life and this stage where he's giving back a lot, and he's just giving back to the industry that he loves, but also inviting other people into it is definitely very cool. So do you have that URL, Tim? You're going to drop that in the chat here in Zoom?
Yes, okay. I just put in there. It's ccawesomefoundation.org, and I just threw it in the chat there. We'll make sure it's available for others, but definitely what a time and the right focus in this moment to think of others, because we're all in our own headspace. So great opportunity there.
All right, so let's get to the question that's on everyone's minds, shall we? Marcel, I'm going to drag you into this because I think last week we definitely found, and the week before, a lot of owners that are going into this state of mind where as soon as clients start to pull back, budgets start to become in question, the economy starts to tank, all these things are happening, that owners start to go into this place in their minds where they are asking like, well, we should just be taking on every project we can, right? We should take every opportunity we can, right? Because I've got to just take whatever I can to maintain my current level of business. And why would that possibly be a bad thing? We should say yes to everything, right? Now, Marcel, why do we think that way? What's going on in our brains when we do that?
It's the creative brain, man. I think we all go into this sort of like mindset that we want to take the job, and then also like the business side of it. So you were like, oh, there's a huge crisis out there, I want to take them all, right? So it is a tough question, and also this whole thing came from a conversation between me and Tim. We were like, what's going to happen with new clients start reaching out that they all want to shift from like live action to animation? I never worked with this person before. What's the contract and legal? Should I take the job or not? So it's confusing. So we were like, okay, we should do one that we talk about this. And I think you guys have great insights. I'm here to learn, actually.
Joel, I was in a conversation this morning called the Monday Meeting. It's a group of freelancers, small business owners, solopreneurs that are kind of dealing with this change as well, and the uncertainties of their jobs and positions. And one of the people in the conversation talked about how he took on a project that he for sure knew was going to be a difficult project. It was more work than he thought he can get done in the short amount of time that he had. But that desperate feeling that we have, that just desire to want to drag anything in because it's the one thing we know that we can do, even though it might affect us in the long term or it might not turn out the way we want to. It's definitely some of that feeling we all have right now, isn't it? Like Marcel, if someone's calling you, you're taking that phone call, even though maybe 2 or 3 months ago, you might have thought, okay, cool, I have a few weeks or to answer that call. You're right now on top of every one of those.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? So I always take calls and conversations, and I love that, so, but it's also like there's a way to measure like what's right for you at this time or not, because also you don't want to like go through all the exercises that we're talking now, cash flow, marketing, and all of that. Let's all get together with my team, get everyone excited, and then all of a sudden, like I blow my cash flow because I took on a project that now I have to finance my client, this new client that I don't even know. And it's like scary, so you have to be very protective with your money. Yeah. But I want to hear like some of your thoughts in terms of like how to like decide that, how to actually, is there something in there that we can all take and say, okay, what's the strategy here? What's the execution? Like how do we conduct that conversation?
Yeah, to me, like I always like to distinguish between strategy and execution, and I think of it like that. Like strategy is the plan or the thoughts through that you're the thoughts of what you're going to do through the process. Execution are the actual steps you make. So think about sitting down in a game of chess and knowing at the very beginning the idea is to capture the other person's king, and you kind of begin with your strategy. You imagine the steps you're going to take, that each movement in the plan, but then the game starts and new items are being thrown at you. You really need to now have an execution method different than your strategy. What I find that people want to do in this moment, especially in that that desperate feeling that's inside of them, they want to jump straight to execution. So they begin making quick decisions. They begin kind of planning their way through. But again, imagine playing chess without any strategy. You would just willy-nilly put stuff out there, regardless of the rules and what the other team is going to do or watching what else is playing on the chessboard. You just start moving your pieces around. You're going to quickly be captured and lose the game. So I want people to kind of slow down in their process and rethink what it might take strategically to work themselves through this process. And that always involves getting back to the fundamentals. So we want to practice like, what are the fundamentals that we have worked with successfully over the years, and how do we re-employ those fundamentals to get back into work today? And then what's going to happen, or the actual execution of those fundamentals, is on a case-by-case basis, a conversation-by-conversation basis. So the first one might be this: should businesses right now go straight for making personal projects? In lieu of not finding projects from clients? That would be one of the first questions that I have. And it's one of the things I've been hearing people doing is like, oh, I don't have any projects. I'm going to do a personal project and update my reel. What do you guys think? Is that like a relevant item today and where you would recommend?
I can speak that, and then I want to hear from Joel. I think it's all about the strategy you have, right? In terms of like how much you can stretch that budget or that cash you have for the next several months, right? So if you have that ability to do some internal work now, sure. My practical question here, Tim, to you is actually like, when you're facing, let's say someone calls me today and then I say, hey, here's a new project for you. And it's an agency, right? And then the agency says, here's a project, and it has this budget, and these are the terms, and then all of a sudden I go back to my cash flow, I plug in those numbers and I say, okay, what happened? I feel like I'm trying to understand what happened if they don't pay me on time. What happened if it's like there's like a sequential liability or things like that it needs to be taken into consideration. Is it better to actually take that project, or maybe that's not even worth it, you know? So how do you actually measure that? Like, is there any indicators that you can say, okay, this is a good project for me, because at least maybe I don't make any profit, but at least I can, you know, keep going with my team, and then I keep, you know, feeding the company and everything.
Right.
So I'm trying to see if there's any indicators that I can take from it and make, you know, faster decisions.
Yeah, that's a good question, because that is one of these kind of desperate moment thoughts is, hey, should I take this anytime a project, any type of project right now, just because the times are tough? And is it worth kind of getting rid of margin and just doing it for cost? So the answer obviously is, again, on a case-by-case basis. So that's in the execution part of it. Strategically speaking, let's think of it like this. No matter what you do as a business, you have to be able to say yes to the project, spend less money than the client is giving you to get the project done, and you still have to get it done on time and on budget. So we know that those are the steps to being successful in business, no matter what. Buy low, sell high, make promises you can keep, and get the project finished on time. So you have to be able to answer that question first, no matter what the project is. You might not like the project. It might not be all the creative juices you want to. It might not be in the scope of what your company positioning is. Those are secondary decisions to, is it a good job, and will you get the job done on time with the resources you have? Marcel, what you're kind of asking is it worth taking on a project if it means ramping up my resources? Or is it worth saying yes to a client if you don't know if they're actually going to pay you in the long run? Those are also things to consider, right? So you're going to begin an engagement with the client. And if you don't trust the other side that they're going to fulfill their part of the obligation, clearly a risk factor going into this. There are some things we can do on the other side. So on the execution side, clearly setting up the terms of the engagement from the very beginning, understanding your resources, again, commitment from those resources that they can follow through with the project. Do your best at producing it the way we always produce all other projects, and then get your contracts in place, get your systems and information in place that you know that you're going to have your act covered and have that project paid for on the other side. Some of that you can do legally. The other side of it, you just ask the client to give you a check. Hey, I've never worked with you before under these current conditions. We can begin this engagement, but I need you to pay me in 10 days. And if we don't get paid in 10 days, then we'll put the project on hold, something like that.
I see. Joel, do you have any take on that?
Well, I want to make it super practical and simple. There was a habit or a simple method that my business partner and I developed many, many years ago when I was running my studio, and it's turned out to be a super handy rule of thumb for a lot of people. And it's trying to answer this question: why does any business ever take on any project ever? And it's funny because I could ask all the owners here, why do you ever take on a project? And people would say, well, because. And if you sit down and really think about it, here's what I know to be true. You take on a project because it satisfies your real, or a relationship, or a reward. And these are these 3 R's. Some people are familiar with this concept. And these really simple rules give you some sort of a framework to say, well, how does this opportunity measure up? Like, should I do this? And the question is simply, okay, is this going to build our real, meaning our reputation, our portfolio? Is this something that's going to further our creative, fame? And then when you look at the relationship, are these people going to appreciate us? Do they refer us? Are they great people to work with? Do we enjoy working with them? And then when it comes to reward, this is really where we're going to focus today. Is the money good? Is the budget there? Is it going to be profitable? But are there good payment terms? Is this client credit worthy? Are they low risk? And then you simply ask, if this opportunity doesn't meet at least 2 of these 3 R's, hopefully it meets all 3, but that's rare. But if it doesn't meet at least 2 of these, what are we doing? Because even if a project only hits on the reward, meaning, we need cash. we should take the project. I would submit you're generally walking into a mess if it only hits on one of those R's. It should hit on at least 2 and hopefully 3. So that's just a very simple rule of thumb that I would invite people to consider, is just to ask yourself, why do we take on projects? And once you sit down and define those 3 R's, you have this simple set of rules where, Marcel, you can look at your team and say, should we do this? And somebody will say, I don't know. I only see it hitting on one of the R's, not 2, and definitely not 3. So I'm nervous.
Yeah. But to me, Joe, so here's the situation, right? Let's say, okay, I saw the project, it hit me like on like the the revenue. Let's say I can get reward, I can make money, and it goes on my reel. It doesn't have a lot of time, so we need to like, speed up things and produce differently. But there's always the legal stuff, the legal part of it that we never pay attention. So for example, one thing that came to my mind, and then I had to learn this in a hard way after I started state, is that there's this thing called sequential liability that we never talk about, right? So sequential liability is that thing that it's in the contract that, agencies only pay you when their client pays them. So is it always necessary to have a contract, and negotiating that terms? Because, we sat down, we say, okay, the project is here, let's do it. It's awesome. And then all of a sudden you get that email, boom. And then it's like sequential liability, and you involve your lawyer. And there's always this question. I know we're going to have like Carrie with us tomorrow to talk about this, but I want to hear you guys' thoughts on terms, because I remember when I first got that, I called you guys. I called Tim and say, hey, dude, sequential liability. Can you negotiate that?
Well, I remember maybe a year or so ago when you and I were working together, and this big job was hanging in the balance, and there was no sequential liability. And then all of a sudden it showed up and it was part of the contract. And we were like, no way. Well, obviously in a time like this, it's amazing how we will lower our standards because, I need the cash. And so what I would say is simply this. I don't find that there's any hard and fast rules, but you just need to ask the right questions. And Carrie Smith tomorrow, she's fantastic. She can give us a lot of practical wisdom and guidance as an entertainment attorney. But I would just simply say this, you just have to kind of get back to asking the question like you did, Marcel. And that is, if this is a new opportunity, I don't yet have a relationship that's trustworthy, there's no credit worthiness yet. You have to kind of ask these tough questions of, what if this job has sequential liability? What if we don't get paid until September? And then just run it through, drop it into your cash flow and say, can we sustain this? And then calculate the risk based on the other factors in play. It's just, I think, asking the tough questions, what if, and being really, really honest with yourself, even though we don't want to be, right? As a creative, I'm like, the project's gonna be so cool, we should do it, and we tend to, I don't know, Tim, is there some sort of a psychological term, some sort of a bias or something that makes us want to diminish those risks, even though we really have no evidence to the contrary?
Yeah, it's the feast and famine quality that we have in us, right? Like we have this thought of like, this is the last meal we're ever going to get. There's no way anything's ever going to come. I have to eat it all right now. So we eat the entire buffet, even though we know the next meal will show up and there'll be food. And there's definitely something that we process when we feel desperate, that we try to grab all we can. That's why all the toilet paper is gone. People grab all that they can in the moment. It's nearly ridiculous, but it's a human factor we have to work against. Marcel, if I were to give someone advice today, I would say that risk of sequential liability seems way too high. And it's not that the client you're working with isn't trustworthy or things that are in place, the intention isn't there and the things in place have all changed. But there's so much uncertainty right now, and it seems to be coming on a week by week basis. People can have the best intentions beginning a project and then really have no control over the other end of it. And the most important part of sequential liability you have to keep in mind is that you're not in charge of your own accounts receivable anymore. You're allowing your client to dictate their terms of accounts receivable, and then it affects you. So if they could cash flow their client for 2 or 3 months, they're not putting the pressure on them to get the money in-house, therefore they don't owe you. And that debt burden or that debt chain that takes place in that way, it's way too risky right now. I want people to be on top of and understand and control their own cash. So definitely I would work hard to break that sequential liability in today's environment.
Yeah, Tim, is there like a rule of thumb when you think about how someone assesses the risk with any given opportunity? Because I've heard you say this before, and I think this really bothered me when you first said this to me years ago.
Whoops.
Yeah. Well, you said, business owners of creative studios and stuff, when they win a project, they think, yay, I've got this big check now. This is so awesome. But you made this great point, the way you phrased it. You said, actually, that's an obligation. It's almost like you're taking on a debt because you've now promised to deliver something and you're taking on a risk. And a live action job, of course, is the classic example where, okay, go spend $100,000 or $200,000 and maybe we'll pay you half up front. Maybe you have to float it all. And that's when you start realizing, oh yeah, a project isn't really, like, that profit is not at all guaranteed. There's so much risk associated with it. And then when you layer on things like sequential liability or just late payment terms or other things, but is there a quick, like, what's the rule of thumb? How can I just look at this thing and say, yes, I should do it, or no, I shouldn't?
Well, under traditional situations, I would say there's definitely a rule of thumb of really what your long-term reward is going to be. So think of it like an investment. If I'm going to put my money in or time in, I want that percentage of margin on top of it. And that's why the client's giving you the project, right? They're basically saying, I'll allow you to take on this project with margin because you're taking on that risk for me. You're hiring your independent contractors and your employees to get the job done, and you're promising to deliver to me. I'm the recipient of it. I want it done on time and on budget. Today, though, I feel like, those 3 R's, right? We work for relationship, real, and reward. Today is in these moments, these are the days to retain those and kind of cash them in. So I don't feel like you should be doing something for relationship. I think this is when you call on the relationship you've invested in to see if they show up. This isn't a moment where you try to hoard or try to find other returns on reward. We don't know what that ROI is going to be. This is the moments to retain that reward side, the cash side of it, and hold it there. And the work you've done in the past on the real, let that set out there. I'm not really sure if it's worth everyone's investment to double down or do a lot of professional or internal work to get projects out there. I don't know what market you're shooting that into. That market is yet to be determined how you're going to position yourself coming out of this. Why double down now until we have some certainty? So today, I want people to hold on to it and cash that in more than I want them to push out and take the risks. But there are clearly going to be moments here where people are going to ask you to step up. And that's the moment of decision. Hey, a client's in a critical situation. They move from live action to animation. Can you step up in this moment? And when you come to the rescue, that entrepreneurial formula can kick in and you can prove that you can do it. Those are when you know, oh yeah, this is green light all the way. This is what I do for a living. And if you feel that confidence, then I think that's a green light for you as well.
Yeah, cool.
We should open things up for anybody that has a question or a comment. Feel free to raise your hand or drop a comment here. Ethan, thank you for putting that little note there for anyone to drop in a question. Marcel, I'm just curious, are you noticing any change in just what I would call default terms, or are people more likely to require a contract in the last month, or less likely to require a contract?
What I can tell from our side, it's been a little slow in terms of getting the legal departments to send us contracts, and I haven't seen any change. And I have a bunch of questions for Carrie tomorrow that we need to take into consideration in terms of what's going to happen if there is another lockdown. Do we need to have that on the contract now? Because if the project get canceled, let's say we're working on the project, we start seeing things getting better, and then all of a sudden, boom, we have another lockdown, and then project is on hold, but then I already invested the money. So I wanna make sure that we are covered into that, but I haven't seen that coming yet in new contracts, or even another pandemic. When people are saying hey, there's a new virus in the air. Should that be in your contract, or what's your capabilities in terms of doing stuff remotely? So is that part of the contract now? Do we need to make sure that we factor that into our bids and all that stuff, So I don't know how that's going to change, but I know there's going to be a change.
Yeah, one thing that Carrie mentioned that I think is going to be very cool to talk about tomorrow is she mentioned to us, hey, I think this is actually an opportunity for the little guys, which is everybody here, to present somewhat of a unified front called, hey, we cannot shoulder risk any more than you can. We know everything rolls downhill, right? Because then there's the client, then the agency, and then the production company, and then the freelancer or whatever. And everyone along that chain of command or food chain, whatever you want to call it, is having to make adjustments. But she was actually quite optimistic. Like she's, Tim, did you hear her when she said, I think this is actually a great time in the industry for somewhat of a reset where the big guys don't just push around all the little guys.
That's I totally agree with her, because there's a moment about ready to take place where our terms of negotiating get to be open wide, and we got to start thinking through each step in the process there. And one of them are these payment terms. Imagine now a big agency calling you and saying, hey, will you take on this project at net 90? There's no way you're going to say yes to that. Cash is so important right now that that's going to be a differentiating factor if you're going to say yes to a project or no. Also, the terms that we have with our own resources as well, the freelancers' terms are going to have to be cleared up and understood. So there's going to be a lot to be brought up in this conversation tomorrow with Carrie and the terms we're bringing forward.
Very cool. Well, I know we've got about 3 minutes left, so we should start to wrap up things. It doesn't look like anyone's got questions yet, but I strongly encourage you to bring questions tomorrow, because Carrie is going to be fully locked and loaded and ready to answer questions. She's such a valuable resource. Tim, you and I and Marcel, we've all worked with her for years. So if whenever I get the opportunity to sit down with her for 10 minutes and pick her brain, it's really, really important that I make the most of it.
Yeah, I've been working with Carrie for, a couple of years. She's amazing. And if you guys, please don't miss this opportunity tomorrow. She'll be with us answering questions. We're going to I have a bunch of questions already, so I need to calm down a little bit. I want to make sure that we talk about that. And it's important for us to be protected, protect your company, protect your employees. And this is a really important part. I know I went to a conference once and then I said the importance of having a lawyer. And some people are laughing. I'm like, man, just wait until you get to a point that you're dealing with payment terms. If you have a really good lawyer that has attention to details, it makes total difference. So I think tomorrow will be amazing, and can't wait.
Yeah, okay. I guess what I'm looking forward to, and I think I would encourage people to think through is, as we work our way through this process and we start imagining putting the pieces back together again with clients, or start building up opportunities with clients, what we want you to do is be best positioned for those opportunities as they come. We know that there are going to be some companies that are going to shift away from being able to take on risk in doing projects. And we want our group, the people we're consulting, to be able to step up and step into that. So the strength that we're building up and the vision we have building up are those strategic positions. How do we envision ourselves moving through this process? And what are the tools we need today? With Carrie, I hope that she's going to open up some conversation with us to help us rethink some of those areas as well. So I'm with you guys. Just a reminder before we wrap up, Chris Sloan and his foundation, the Caleb and Calder Sloan Awesome Foundation, there are matching grants. So if that's available to you, you want to find a nonprofit to give to, please hit them up. We put the information in the chat group here. So I just encourage everyone to do it. It's a great expression of love and compassion at this moment.
Also, Richard, I saw you asking if there are replays, and it looks like Ethan got you the answer to that. But yes, in the Slack, 7 Ingredients Slack channel, we post replays whenever we do these. So be sure to take advantage of that. Well, let's wrap it up for today, everyone. Just a quick hello to all these familiar faces. I see Robert and Rich and Neil, Manwai, Lou, John. I mean, I could just go down the list. It's really cool to have all you guys here with us each day. And we try and keep these to 30 minutes and keep them crisp and keep them action-packed and valuable. So with that, I think we will sign off. I'm looking forward to Carrie tomorrow. Tim, any last comments from you?
Just that I want everyone to know how much I appreciate the hard work they're doing. These small groups like the Monday meeting group, we know that you guys are all meeting and processing things. So anything we can do to help you, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to jump in those conversations. But the work is great and we're going to get through it together.
All right, Marcel, it's your chance. Give us your final thought.
My final thoughts is for tomorrow. I can't wait to talk to Carrie and, just try to understand this new situation on the legal side. So let's get ready for tomorrow.
All right, well, thanks everyone. We did it. It's top of the hour. So we're gonna let you get back to your day, make it an awesome one. Hope it's a great week, and we'll see you guys tomorrow for our live stream with Carrie Smith. Until then, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Goodbye.